Hey book lovers, my name is Em and I want to talk about books. And cats. Hey book lovers, welcome back. So today is going to be a first. This is the first time that I'm going to discuss a book that I did not like, but I did finish. Usually I like to only discuss books that I really enjoy, and I like to talk about new authors. This is neither of those things, but I just finished the book and I'm all riled up about it, so we're going to talk. So I want to talk about the book The Store by Bentley Little. So it was super slow to get going, but I was curious about the story. It was intriguing, it just didn't really go anywhere. I grabbed this book on impulse when I was at Walmart with the kids, and Andy has read other books by this author and said they were good, and there was a quote from Stephen King on the cover, and he has talked about this author before and given him lots of praise. So, I just went for it. And I can see why Stephen King likes him. He writes a lot like him. And maybe I'm just a little burned out on that too, but we'll get to it. Anyway, first of all, for this book, the language is very dated. It came out in 1998, and you can definitely tell. It was so jarring that I had to stop reading and check the publication date because I had no idea what time period it was supposed to be, but it felt like the 90s, the late 90s. There were some dead giveaways like the boxy home computers and stuff like that. Anyway, let's get into the plot a bit, and if you do want to read this book, there are going to be lots of spoilers. So you can jump on ahead to after the break. So the story is set in Juniper, which is your typical small town in America. It's very much like time just stood still there, and I can relate to this. I actually live in a very rural small town, and I have to say that just the behavior of the townspeople, dead on. Just dead on. Anyway, so the story is coming to Juniper, and Bill, who is our main character, I will not use the word hero. He's kind of more of an anti-hero, I guess. Anyway, Bill's pissed about it. They have bulldozed a field that he loved, and he decides that he needs to start going to town council meetings and getting involved in the town politics. Sounds great. So this is where the book turns into a total quagmire. I felt like I was attending the meetings right along with Bill. Those chapters just went on and on and on, and there was more than one meeting. It was just too much. I can see how some of it was necessary to kind of establish how the store was taking over the town, but it was just too much. I feel like it could have been cut down quite a bit. So the store is ruining local businesses. It's driving them out of business using whatever means necessary, but mostly just by offering goods and services at stupidly low prices. Soon, almost everyone in town is working at the store, and the store has very strict policies. There's also a very prevalent feeling of fear and danger that grows as the store takes over the police department, the fire department, the schools, and the media. In the early days of the store, Bill is part of a very small vocal minority. Most people were excited for what the store was bringing into town, at least at first. Even Bill's daughters, Sam and Shannon, are working there for the summer. Sam gets a job there first, right around the time of the store opening. She's earning money for college, which she will be attending in the fall. But soon the store has its claws in her, and she's trapped. She follows the protocols and does whatever is required to move up the corporate ladder. She becomes a miserable, mindless shill, and she becomes distanced from her family, especially as her father's disdain for the store grows and becomes louder. As summer gets going, Shannon is bored. Almost everyone is working for the store and therefore cannot hang out with non-store people. That's one of the rules. She begs her parents to also be able to apply. They say no, and she ends up lying to them and doing it anyway. Sam pulls some strings, which it's never clearly stated what she has to do, but it definitely involves her trading her body to save her sister some of the pain of what the new hires usually go through, because it's messed up. I think this kind of disrupts the brainwashing process, and Shannon never completely falls prey to the store. She wants out after a very short time, and she begins seeing strange things, including, like, blood on the floor, just strange stuff. During all of this, Bill and his buddies are trying to find a way to stop the store. From what, they're only kind of clear on, but things are beginning to add up to something that is supernatural and terrifying. His wife, Ginny, is a teacher at the elementary school, and she's being shunned by her coworkers. She was once well-liked, but her husband's outbursts at the town council meetings have turned most of the pro-store people against her as well. The whole family is suffering, basically. So most of this book is about the store's takeover of the town. There is a supernatural element, but it also speaks to the takeover just of massive store chains. This book came out around the same time that Walmart was first exploding all over the country. And I remember a lot of people feeling kind of the same way. Anyway, so then things take a turn. Bill has written numerous letters and emails to the CEO of the store to try to get Shannon released from her contract. Finally, he hears from Mr. King. The CEO invites him to come to Dallas, to the headquarters, which is in the Black Tower, and he wants to have a little chat. So Bill gets on a lavish private jet and is flown to the Black Tower. After he meets Mr. King, he is swayed to actually join a manager training program. He is convinced he can turn things around in Juniper if he is running the store there. The training is a 2-week program that starts with some classic cult moves, such as humiliation and abuse, to really break him down. And then he begins the trainings. This part bothered me for 2 reasons. First, Bill has been so vehemently opposed to the store that this flip to training for a manager position feels really jarring. Even with the justification of changing the town for the better, I guess it does kind of show part of his character. Like, Bill definitely has a power-hungry thing in him. I think most people do. I think power corrupts. Anyway, the second thing that really bothered me about this part is super gross. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I read a lot of gross things, like disturbing things. Plus, I have a definite love of true crime. So there isn't like a lot that bothers me, but this is definitely one of them. As a reward for completing his training, Bill wakes up to a woman just riding him in the dark. He cheats on his wife, which is some fucking bullshit, but not super shocking. The shock comes later when he finds out that it was his daughter, Sam. And this is where I got pissed off. Language warning for a few minutes, and probably before this, honestly, whoops. This is when I started to really think, like, I need to switch back to female authors for a while, because this cis male gaze is infuriating. I do not understand the obsession with fucking the daughter. I don't think many women are fantasizing about their fathers. It really seems like a straight dude thing, and it's fucking gross. I don't know if this guy has kids, but, like, I seriously doubt he does, because, I don't know. Not something I want to think about. Anyway, I feel like Bill's reaction really seems too mild. He gets past it way too quickly. His daughter has been used up and abused, completely ruined, and now traumatized beyond belief. But basically, he briefly feels a little ill, worries about his wife finding out, and then it barely comes up again. Like, fuck off. Think of your fucking daughter, you self-centered piece of trash. Okay. Language warning off, I think. I will try to compose myself, but seriously, it's gross, and it's not necessary. I have a hard time with this because I also don't support censorship, so I guess write your incest stuff if you want, but it really seems unnecessary to me. If you need to suddenly throw something into your story that is that disturbing, because it's not like the rest of the book was at this level, it just suddenly came out of nowhere, I think that you're lacking confidence in your writing. I think you're just going for shock value at that point because you're not confident in your story. But hey, what do I know? I'm sure he has sold a bunch of copies. I bought one, which I'm not very happy about. Anyway, the ending is not super exciting and it's wrapped up way too easily. It hardly takes any time at all, which makes 2/3 of this book all about those town council meetings. Woohoo. And I just also despised Bill, and that's never good. I am all for a good anti-hero. I think there is some very fertile ground there, but Bill was just awful. He was equally as terrible as his opponent, the store. I was never rooting for him. He said some just incredibly, angering things. I just wasn't rooting for him. Most of the time, I just wanted him to shut up. The entitled white male from the 90s really just needs to stay there. So, that's the store, anyway. Normally, I really only want to talk about things that I enjoy. I want to support new writers. I want to just celebrate books. This has not been a celebration, and I do realize that, but I had some feelings, and I needed to talk about it. I'll get back to books that I love. You know, I guess it says something that, well, the story was not super fleshed out. It was somewhat interesting if you just kind of skimmed the meeting parts. I would have given it a C, C+ up until the gross reveal, and then I was just done and pissed off. I only finished it because I was hoping to learn more about the supernatural parts, but there wasn't really much to it. I don't know. I think I just need a break from books where women are abused and treated like secondary citizens. I mean, I already have to walk around in the world, you know? Anyway, I'm in a mood today. I'm sorry, book lovers. I do have questions for you, though. First, what books have you read that you found subpar, for whatever reason? I'd especially love to hear if it's something that a lot of people have really enjoyed, like that you did not like at all. I would love to hear why. Second, what is the grossest thing that you have read in a book? Yeah, let's talk about it. There is definitely something about writing for shock, and I understand that that is a whole, basically, genre of writing at this point, but I think it can be done well and it can be done poorly. And I would love to hear about some of the poorly done ones that you have found. And finally, can I have some suggestions for books about women that are whole, well-rounded characters with modern plots and characters? I really need a break. And I know they're out there. I just don't know what to find. Sometimes I get stuck in certain genres and I just don't know how to break out of it. And I feel like I'm kind of at that point right now. I don't know. I just want something different. Okay, anyway, it's time for a break. I'm going to go chill out. And when I come back, I will tell you about my family's history with Christmas kitties. Hey, book lovers. I know you like to read, but do you enjoy learning new languages? If so, why not combine the two? Prismatext is an awesome company that provides tons of great classic novels, with other languages built right into the text. If you don't know a word, you can click on it and see the translation immediately. If you use my code BOOKSandCats, that's books, the letter N, cats, you can get 30% off your purchase. Get a single book or go for a bundle. Prismatext books are in English, with words and phrases in many languages, including Spanish, Italian, German, and Portuguese. Check out Prismatext this holiday season and add a fun new component to your language journey. Use the link in the show notes and code Books and Cats for 30% off. Lezen à la débouche. Read all the books. Welcome back, book lovers. So, Christmas Kitties. Now, I absolutely love Christmas. If you've been listening to this podcast for any time at all, you probably know that already. I really love the whole end of the calendar year, Halloween through Christmas. But Christmas is my favorite, for sure. I always go all out, but the universe has added a little something extra for my family. 2 years in a row, we had kittens show up at our door in the freezing cold winter and very close to Christmas. We live near a cornfield, so people dump kittens there sometimes. Both of them were super small when we found them, or I guess when they found us. Finding Edward in the driveway was such a special thing. He and I have been bonded since that moment. I scooped him up immediately, and I'm usually a little more hesitant, but this guy was just a little ball of black fluff, and I knew that he was mine. I had to hold him. And he immediately started the loudest purr I have ever heard. Yeah, he and I are soul bonded for sure. The other one was Strudel, who recently passed. Unfortunately, she got hit by a car. She came first, and she was incredibly tiny. She was always like a small cat, but she also was just really, really young. And she brought such peace to our house at a very turbulent time. And it was an almost like immediate change. It was palpable. She was always my husband's girl. She absolutely adored him. And he's definitely missing her quite a bit. So I will say that quite a bit of time has passed since Edward showed up. I was a little afraid that the following Christmas there was going to be another kitten because we already had 4 cats and a dog. But it's been almost 6 years since my weird one joined the family. We've lost our bitty girl, and my heartbroken husband has recently begun expressing interest in getting a new kitty. Yesterday, 10 degrees outside, a cat showed up on our porch. What the hell? This one is kind of skittish and real ragged looking. We're not sure how old, but he looks like he's lived some wild adventures already. We've had other cats stop by in the winter, but they kind of move on. I'm not sure about this one yet. Not super lovey immediately, like weird, and no confidence like Strudel. She just kind of walked in like she owned the place. That was honestly the smoothest animal addition ever. This new guy is scared, but he's hungry, and I'm not going to let him starve. He can hang out or not. We'll see what happens, but I'm glad I can help him either way. He's cute. He's a little fluff ball. So that's my Christmas kitties. We'll see about this new guy. I'll keep you updated. Now let's move on to the quote of the week. So for this week's quotes, I should just call it quotes of the week, let's be honest. Anyway, since I am looking for new books and new genres, I kind of had trying new things on the brain. So here are some quotes that will inspire you to try new things. The first one is from one of my favorite authors, Neil Gaiman. I hope that in this year to come you make mistakes. Because if you are making mistakes, then you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. You're doing things you've never done before, and more importantly, you're doing something. I love that. I love Neil Gaiman. The next quote is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. All life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. I like that. This next one is from Josh Barnett, and I wasn't sure who that was, so it's either Josh Barnett, the actor, or the UFC fighter. I'm kind of assuming it's the actor, but who knows? If you're trying to live life, really live it. You should, in my opinion, try to expand all aspects of your life. Open yourself to new ideas and new things, even if you find you don't like them in the end. But at least knowing them has taken you that much further along into being a more experienced and well-rounded person in this world. I'm all about new experiences and trying to be a well-rounded person. Anyway, it is now time for a new chapter of my weekly writing project, Heart of the Storm. straight from my brain, unedited, to you. Now we are moving quickly toward the end of this book, and I am really excited with how it's coming out. As a first draft anyway. I am really looking forward to getting into the editing for this one. I know it's going to be a major project. This is one of the longer things that I've written, and I also know that I have some plot holes that need fixing. But I'm excited. Remind me of this when I am 2/3 of the way through editing and ready to stab a pen into my eyes. But yeah, without further ado, this week is chapter 34 of Heart of the Storm. Enjoy. Harper rolled to a stop at the end of the forest path. She was exhausted. Her body was changing rapidly, and her lower spine was already rigid and unmoving. She was slowly gaining better control over her lower half. The chair moved under her will, but she was still fine-tuning the movements. The forest and mountain trails had been good practice. She felt much more connected to her chair, and stronger. But now they had reached the edge of the forest, and beyond a long grassy hill lay the massive structure that was her mother's mansion, and Mina's mansion, and Francie's childhood home. She turned to her cousin and wondered what she was feeling. Francie had started out so hard, but she was an injured little girl under all the bluster. Harper was angry. She didn't have an exact reason for it. It burned like a white-hot fire in her belly and propelled her forward on what was most certainly a walk, or roll, to the end of her life. Maz hadn't explained anything to them, and they had blindly followed. Harper hadn't cared at first. Her anger drove her forward. She just wanted to be going somewhere, anywhere. If she was honest with herself, she was trying to escape this new, ungainly body. Her abilities were greater now, and it dulled the rage a little. It gave her some time to think, and now she wasn't so sure that Maz had a plan at all. They seemed nervous, and as if they were making things up on the fly. Maz hesitated on the edge of the forest. They looked grim and even paler than usual. Francie stood just behind them. She was staring up at the looming building with an expression that was a mix of fear and sadness. Harper had not really considered her cousin until now. She hadn't thought about what this might be like for Francie. Of course, Harper felt that she'd had it the worst of all of them. She'd never even known her mother. Because of the others. She was going to get her chance now. Her mother was waiting somewhere in that massive display of opulence, and it was time for a reunion. No matter what Maz had planned, Harper had her own objectives. Francie did not want to go back to the mansion. It had been the plan the whole time, but she had not allowed herself to think about it. Now it was looming over them, and all that was left between her and the home of her childhood nightmares was an open expanse of grass. Nowhere to hide. Francie leaned heavily on a nearby tree. Her legs felt leaden. She couldn't imagine how much effort it would take to cross the lawn. Harper turned and finally seemed to see her. She gave Francie a worried smile. She hadn't said much since the incident with the trees, and her expression had been dour. Seeing her smile now did not make Francie feel better. "Let's go," Maz said shakily. "Around the courtyard to the left. You first." Maz shoved Francie and she stumbled onto the grass. She was visible, exposed. She froze and stared up at the massive building and the multitude of dark, imposing windows. "Run," Maz hissed. "Hurry up." Francie ran. She darted around the mansion with her lungs burning from the exertion. As she rounded the corner, she collided with a solid mass of flesh. The creature that had once been Ke loomed over her, and his face was too gruesome to look upon. Francie crumpled to her knees in fear and buried her face in her hands. He placed a large, gnarled finger on the top of her head, and he let out a bone-chilling howl as she slowly turned to stone. Harper took off with a speed that startled her. From the corner where she had just watched Francie disappear came a mournful wail that broke Harper's heart and shattered whatever spell held her in place. She rocketed away from Maz, and they didn't recover very quickly. Maz leapt into the air and flew at full speed after the greenish blur that was all they could now see of Harper. Their wings ached. Maz had not been blessed with flight. Only Nume had been born with that magic. But Maz was determined and had managed an experimental but so far successful surgery. The pain was sharp and electric. Soon Maz had to land. Their vision blurred with each new pulse of pain. They collapsed to their knees and waited for it to pass. As they knelt in the grass, the ground began to tremble. Maz lifted their head and watched the sea of gray-skinned, blue-tattooed women emerge from beneath the mansion. Manx's army. Thea's now. His artwork. Her assassins. Their bond had been something deeper than affection or lust. It was eternal. The man had known his end. He had known what would happen. But he did as he was told. The creatures moved as a unified group. They marched up to Maz and surrounded them. They stood unblinking and staring at Maz, just waiting. Maz stood. Thea's army did not stir. They waited. Maz put their hands behind their back and rubbed their fingertips together. The silent, staring faces were annoying them, and finally they cried out in frustration. "Just do it already! Go ahead and try it!" The group of tattooed faces continued their blank stares until something seemed to click, and they all slowly began to smile. Maz tried to ignore the drop of sweat rolling down their spine. They rubbed their fingertips together faster. The sea of grinning, tattooed faces rippled. They parted to allow their queen to pass. They dropped to one knee as Thea walked by. She smiled as she moved through them like a benevolent god. Her smile withered when she reached Maz. "Stand," she commanded. Her army obeyed as a unit. Thea stared Maz down. She didn't relent until they looked away first. A childhood game. Only now the stakes were higher than ever. "Impressive, isn't it?" Thea said slyly. "Who else can say their husband built them an army?" "And where is that husband of yours?" Maz asked dryly. "He served his purpose. We were very open in our marriage. It was a beneficial union. And there once might have been love. Who knows? My time in the other realm has wiped away my humanity. I feel nothing." Her eyes were terrible. Maz was transfixed. They could not break away. Thea was smiling. "I know all about you and your schemes. You thought you were so sneaky. You thought you moved undetected. None of you ever truly understood the level of my powers. I know everything. I know what you're thinking right now." Thea raised a hand overhead. She turned away, and Maz was released from her piercing gaze. When she snapped her fingers, her mindless army began to move. They removed weapons from their cloaks and pockets. Some bore slingshots, while others fit arrows to their bows. A low sound was growing closer. A buzzing. The sound of thousands of wings. Maz's children flew en masse toward them, and a shadow fell over the land. Their numbers blocked out the sun. They dove suddenly and scooped up Maz, lifting their leader into the safety of the sky. Even as they dipped, Thea's army let loose their first barrage, and many of the flybits were hit and fell. They cried out in a singular wail of pain. Maz wanted to as well. They felt the pain of the little ones. Somewhere under the mountain, Maz knew Rhea felt it too. The second wave took out even more flybits, and Maz cried out as they dropped at an alarming rate. New hands grabbed Maz and stopped their fall, but they slipped again when the third attack came. Rhea crumpled to the floor, gripping her stomach. A single gasp escaped her lips. Nim knelt beside her and tried to understand what was happening. "Rhea?" she said softly. She touched her cousin with one finger, and the beautiful girl burst into flames. Nim screamed and tried to scramble away from the inferno. As she pulled back her hand, the tip of her finger glowed bright orange. The molten goo that had been her cousin held on. It stretched between them in a thick, glowing thread, and as Nim stared in horror, the goo began to move further up the finger. It burned terribly. Nim screamed again. She squeezed her eyes shut and waited, but nothing happened. Instead, the burning continued its excruciating crawl up her arm. She regretted not paying attention when Maz tried to teach her spells. She had hoped it would just happen. Her magic would materialize when she needed it. Laughter made her open her eyes. Rhea stood before her, still enveloped in flames, and even more beautiful than before. Where their hands joined had turned to shiny black stone. It reflected the light of Rhea's presence. Nim tried to pull away. "Don't bother," Rhea laughed. "It has already begun." "What's begun?" she whispered. Nim wanted to scream, but her voice was gone. Even whispering hurt. Her throat was on fire. Rhea's smile was bright and sharp in the light of her own flames. "One way or another, things are changing tonight. I have felt the death of my mother. I have been given her strength, her magic." Nim couldn't respond. Her insides were boiling, and the pain found its way into every cell of her body. Rhea caressed Nim's face and smiled when the girl flinched at the hiss of her hand making contact. "I'm helping you. I know it's hard to believe. One way or another, I must kill you. This way we can be bonded forever. You will be a part of me. Death comes for us all. Let us go together. Unite our magics and join the winning team. You know without Maz the others are doomed. Better to join Aunt Thea now and stay on her good side." A soothing coolness followed the burning. Nim relaxed and allowed it to come. She didn't care anymore. She had no more responsibilities. Let Rhea figure it out. "Wake up," Rhea barked. Nim's eyes popped open. "What?" She was angry. This was supposed to be over, but she was still in the dark, cavernous room. "What are you so angry about?" Rhea asked. "You know we're unending, right?" Her voice was incredibly close. It felt like she was speaking in Nim's head. Nim turned and found her cousin's face only inches from her own. "Come on," Rhea said with a smile. "It won't be so bad. We're going to die either way." Nim finally understood. Bound together. One body, chiseled from stone. Two faces, two minds, trapped together. She sighed, but there was no other option. She was already gone. "I guess." "Look at us," Rhea said proudly. Nim looked down. The glittering stone form was sculpted and strong. "Oh, wow." Nim didn't know what else to say. "I know, right?" Rhea said happily. "Now listen. One more step." "Wait, what do you mean?" Nim suddenly felt cold. An icy wind circled the room and grew in intensity. A heaviness settled in her bones. Nim tried to pull back away from the center of the room, but Rhea disagreed and lurched forward. She was by far the stronger of the two, and their bodies stumbled forward. Nim saw the pit just before they fell over the edge. The fall took her breath away. Then the impact took her life. And that is the end of chapter 34 of Heart of the Storm. I hope you're still enjoying it. And thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with a book that I actually enjoyed. And maybe an update on the new potential Christmas kitty. We'll see. Thank you again, and until next time, keep reading. Cats.